You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, episode 56. This week on the show, we're taking on your questions. Dan and I will cover some of the questions that we receive via email and social media. All right, welcome everyone to the 56th episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We're your on-demand audio source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. If you'd like to check us out online, you can do so at hpoutdoors.com. You can find us across all of the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you're looking to catch up on all the old episodes that we've got out there, you can do that at hpoutdoors.com or, of course, on iTunes or anywhere that fine podcasts are found. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at info@hpoutdoors.com or hit us up on the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast hotline, which is 724-609-FOWL. 724-609-3695. That's a voicemail system where you can call in if you have questions or comments on the show. You can call us right there on that line and give us some feedback or ask a question or whatever. And if we like it, we'll use it on the show. And joining me on the show, as he always does, is Minivan Dan. Dan, what's up, man?
What up? Now, one thing I sincerely hate, and I know I always talk about weather, but it has been so muggy up here. And it is miserable. It's
muggy everywhere.
I know. I just can't handle it. Like, it's just, everything's sticky and sweaty. And my appendages are so sweaty, as you know.
It's disgusting.
To start. Oh, my hands and whatever. But,
that is unfortunate.
Well, today, what is today? Today's Thursday. Tomorrow is the last day of early season. I'm still trying to get the okay to go. I'm taking a day off tomorrow to go down to my buddy's weekend wedding festivities, so I'm trying to get a hunt in early in the morning. So hopefully we can do that. We got some birds lined up, and, there's no better time than tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Man, that's weird. Our early teal season just came in. And it's kind of making me think now that you mention it, I'm not really sure when our early goose season ends. But I need to look that up, which I'm going to do right now. But I didn't think it was till like the very last day of the month. But now you've got me a little bit concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here.
Always check
September
your regulations.
25th. Dang.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it ends on the 25th. That is unfortunate.
So what is today, the 22nd?
Yeah, so
24th, Sunday.
I'm gonna hunt Sunday, and then that'll be the end of it till we've got like a 4-day. We got a 4-day. Let's see here. October 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th is a 4-day duck season with black duck closed, and then we're done until like mid-November, like second week of November is when we come back. So
it's miserable.
I'll do some fly fishing and maybe some archery hunting. I need to do a little neighborhood eradication for some friends, so maybe I'll do some of that. But actually, you know what, man? It sucks that there's a month that there's nothing to really hunt for birds, but it's good in the sense that I get a couple early season hunts in, and then I get like a break where I can do like pumpkin patch and that other junk, family stuff.
Yeah. And
kind of build up some brownie points for when, the weather's really good and we're getting into the heart of the season. Cause, I'm not doing much family stuff, when that's going on. So, it works out in the long run.
And then you have all those migrators down there once you get back in. So that's the best part about it. Where we end up, I think December 31st is our last day of duck. And then that's when all the divers will show up, about January 4th or so. every single year.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's kind of research to prove out that the migration is pushing back later into the season,
right.
And I mean, I'm sure at one point your season was probably spot on where December was probably loaded with migrators up there. And, it was good hunting. But now, I mean, you miss them by like a month, if not a little bit more even, I'd say.
Yeah. Which, I mean, we could go up to Lake Erie, and a lot of guys do that. But, I mean, it just stinks that we have really nice lakes around here that are open and holding birds, and you can't do anything.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that sucks. Well, this week we decided to take on some listener questions, and we've done this in the past, and we got some really good feedback. So we get questions all the time, and we try to keep up the best we can, but we get questions at us via the phone hotline there. We get them via email. We get them on all the social media accounts, and some are coming in on Facebook, some are coming in on Twitter, some are coming through the listeners group, which I forgot to mention. If you're out there and you're on Facebook and you want to chat with us or a bunch of the guys that listen to this show, check us out at the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast listeners group on Facebook and request access, and we'll get you in there to chat with us. But we get questions across all of these different platforms and stuff and try to keep up with them best we can. But sometimes it's nice to just take a bunch of them and kind of knock them out and talk about them on the show, and it generates a lot of good discussion. And I think when we did this in the past, it worked out pretty good. So we decided to kind of do that again. So we've got a handful that we're going to discuss here. And if you've got questions that you'd like to hear us discuss, or, you want to bounce off us or something like that, you can, hit us up via all the different means we have there. And if we don't get back to you, you may hear your question used on, an episode like this in the future. So we definitely see them, and we try to keep up best we can.
Yeah, if it's Facebook, we definitely get back. I think we have like a 4-minute return on that because it actually states how fast we get back. We're like 100% in returning messages with a 4% delay, or a 4-minute delay. So that's pretty good. It was getting higher up there for a little bit, but hello.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you're in Colorado and I'm not near a computer or my phone a good bit during the day, that tends to lag a little bit, but usually, within like a day or so at the max, we're usually trying to get back to people, but sometimes we miss them and, all that good stuff. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into some of these questions, because I'm sure we'll have questions and kind of discussion from the questions. But let's see what we got here in the old mailbag, so to speak. First question is from Rob, and Rob wants to know about setting up for divers in lake situations. So Rob says, "Hey guys, I live in Minnesota and have a great flyway for divers, but I'm flying blind on the approach to hunting them. I've harvested plenty of bluebills here, and but he's seeking advice on how to focus on birds like this. He's fairly tenured on the local ducks opening weekend and second week, but he rarely goes out later as the weather pushes the birds out of Manitoba. At this point, he hits the woods up to feel the freezer. So he's like you, Dan. He does a lot of deer hunting. My question is, knowing that these ducks like to raft up deeper, where should I set up? For mallards, woodies, teal hunting, he takes his 12-foot boat into the cattail marsh areas. Hunting the northern divers, should he find a different location, or can he hunt them in similar locations? And what are the ideal characteristics that some of these ducks will seek? And how should he set up to hunt them differently than he does mallards? So, basically this is your typical mallards versus, or puddle ducks versus diver ducks kind of setup question. And being that you, have so much experience in this realm, why don't you go ahead and take this question on first?
I was going to say, maybe you should, another question that we get all the time is what your long lines are made out of.
Yep.
I was going to say, why don't you go ahead and start with that?
Okay. So yeah, my preferred method to set up diver spreads is long lines, and I use the Ductari long line systems. They're definitely not the cheapest, but from everything that I've researched in my experience using them, I don't know if there's a better system out there. It's not unlike any other system, but it's just a one-stop shop where you can get a lot of good quality rope and everything together in one spot. So basically I use like a nice thick main line, and I only use 18-inch droppers with 5-inch clips on them. And they're the same kind of clips that you could find if you look up like a commercial fishing vendor or something like that. You can get these clips everywhere, but they have them tied up on a tarred, dropper line that I secure to the main line. That's like I don't know if it's a 1/4 inch. I think it's a 1/4 inch line. Sometimes you can use 3/8, but pretty much when you're hunting diver ducks, if you're going to use a long line setup, the thing that you want to keep in mind is the thinner the line, the more likely they're going to tangle. And when it's 4 a.m. and it's freezing cold, the last thing you want to deal with is tangled lines. Trust me. So I use a 1/4 inch line, and I use the HPOWP leaf bags that you get from Home Depot. So these are just your, yard bags. They've got holes in the bottom of them. They're collapsible. They're really nice. They're perfect. They're about $15 a piece. And I leave the ducks right on the main line, and I just throw them all in there, right? So when I'm picking them up, I just feed the rope in and I throw the decoys in. And then when I go to hunt, I just do it the reverse. The key to this scenario is only handle the ducks by the main heavy line. If you're grabbing when you're pulling your rig out and you're setting it, if you pull only on the main line, the ducks will not tangle. If you start grabbing individual ducks or droppers and pulling them out of there, they're going to tangle. I don't know why. I guess it's just science, but you grab that main line and just pull it out, and it works flawlessly. It's incredibly fast. I mean, I run 90-foot lines, and I run 12 decoys per line, and I set them super quick. I mean, it just could not be easier. And I use like 5-pound dumbbells that I bought at Walmart for my anchors, and it's just really easy. So you can, fit a lot into a small space. I can usually fit like 24 diver decoys into a HPOWP bag. So, I hunt 4 or 5 dozen decoys easily out of my canoe. So it makes it nice and easy to get out there, set up a large, good number of ducks quickly. And, I can't imagine doing it any other way, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, it sounds like you got it figured out for sure. Going back to, should he be hunting the cattail marshy area? My first instinct would be, what are you seeing? Are you out there scouting? Are they feeding in that area? Are they located there? Are they spending time there? And that's where I would start as far as if I'm going to set up in that area. Then what did you say? What's ideal characteristics that some of these ducks will seek? And then setting up with the long lines. If they're in there having food, it's a cattail marshy area. I mean, the cattail marshy area around here, we're not going to see a lot of diver ducks in it because the cattail marshy areas just, I don't think, have enough big water on it. It's actually it's
shallow.
Right. So I don't know exactly where he's, that's a tough question, but yeah, well, it's probably, like you said, you're probably going to get more open water where they can land and take off and do their thing there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to speak in generalities because I don't know his particular situation, but, diver ducks, depending on the kind of diver ducks and where the pressure is and all that kind of stuff, like you mentioned, they'll raft up often, right? You'll see these big knots of ducks, but they're doing this, primarily for security, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times you'll see them rafting up because they're in a spot where there's food, right? And if you're not pushing them and they're not pressured, they're going to stay there. So they like open water for the security, right? But they also, they don't like water, at least in my experience, they don't like water that's like 40 or 50 feet deep because they can't dive to the food as easily. But if it's like 4 to 6 feet deep, from my experience, or sometimes even a little bit deeper than that, I've seen them pile up together right there just because, the vegetation's growing, a couple feet off the bottom of the water, reservoir, whatever you're on, and they'll dive down there and they'll dabble in that and they'll, little insects and stuff like that. But, typically I'm looking for spots that are going to have vegetation or food sources. I also like spots that are kind of, you may want to set up in a cattail marsh, but I would look for ones that are like a point maybe. So you might be able to get birds that are trading back and forth between two pockets of water. And if you've got a marshy cattaily point that can provide you a little cover where you can stick out into the water a little further, that's a good idea. Depending on which way the wind is blowing and how hard it's blowing, you may have birds trying to get out of that wind a little bit. So you might have a finger or a cove or something that provides some wind cover that you might be able to utilize. That kind of thing. All of that sort of factors into it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm kind of with you. I look where the birds are and I try to get as close to that point as you can. The only thing I would caution you is just be careful with the 12-foot boat getting too far out into kind of any open water, with any kind of wind. I mean, that could turn out pretty bad pretty quickly.
Yep. From experience, I know that one. You all right over there?
What's that?
You all right?
Yeah, my son is sick. He's had a cough and a fever for like a week, and I might be getting it. I'm not really sure, but hopefully I'll be able to edit that out so everyone can't hear my hack session, unlike your cricket infestation.
It's funny because I can't hear him because I have the headphones on. So I guess it is what it is. So Rob, I hope that we help you out a little bit, and I hope you fill your freezer up and get a chance to chase those late season divers there. And we'll go on to number 2. This is from Alex, and he was asking, he says a possible show topic, and one that we already talked about a little bit, but tips on how to bring a newbie, a new adult or kid into the duck blind. And he loves the show and to keep up the great work. And I love reading. I love reading stuff like that.
Yeah, appreciate you, the kind words there, Alex, no doubt.
So newbie, we talked about, taking a kid out and making sure that, you don't have high expectations. Realize the attention span isn't what us older hunters have, and they're going to be looking all around, and just try and make it fun. If you have to take an iPad or whatever and let them enjoy that for a little bit to try and get some ducks in, and then do what you need to do. Do you want to take on an adult newbie?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of them parallel in concept, I guess. I mean, you want to set it up to where you can have a reasonable expectation for some success, right? I mean, there's, it's even hard for me, I mean, I love being outside. I love duck hunting, everything, but when birds aren't flying, it stinks. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just not as fun. So, you want to get an opportunity where there's a reasonable expectation to at least see some birds, have them engaged. But a lot of it too, you want to focus on things other than the harvest, the safety aspect, the conservation aspect, kind of why you're doing things, sort of just engaging them in this scenario. I can remember, when I first started deer hunting, it was like, okay, go stand up on the, next to that tree and get somewhere where you can see good. Okay. So I stood there, froze, didn't see any deer. It sucked, right? It's like, if anyone would have explained to me, well, this is a good spot because, to explain to me what a funnel is and what that's trying to accomplish and, that sort of thing. Just kind of anything you can do to engage them in the act, in the hunt, talk to them about shotguns and talk to them about the different sizes of shot and just educate, and hopefully when you do see some birds flying, that just sort of fuels the fire. But, there's so much that goes into it that for a new hunter, a lot of it just feels so overwhelming, right? I mean, if you're a deer hunter, let's just break it down to as simple as you can. Let's say you're a rifle deer hunter. Okay. You may know a lot about hunting deer with the rifle, but then when you start looking into doing it with the bow, it's a whole new bag of tricks that you got to learn about, with what goes into it with hunting the bow. So even if they're a seasoned hunter, let's say a deer hunter, and you introduce duck hunting or goose hunting to them, that's a whole new bag of tricks that goes into it. Calling, decoys, cover, concealment, all of these things that are, different, it can feel overwhelming. So try to simplify it, break it down and explain and engage. I'm going through this right now as I'm trying to teach myself about fly fishing. I look at these videos and magazines and stuff, and they talk about these bugs and these flies. And I'm like, they all look the same to me. Like, I don't know the difference between a stonefly and a caddisfly and a nymph and all this stuff, you know? So I'm like reading about this and I feel really, really overwhelmed a lot of the time. So I felt the same way when I started duck hunting too. You know, so that would be my biggest thing, is just kind of try to simplify the process the best you can so that they don't feel overwhelmed and they're not as reluctant to keep trying if it's something that they do enjoy. But, you know, maybe they have a fun hunt and they just say, you know, that was a great time, but like, you know, I can't afford all those decoys and I can't, you know, get into all this and trailers and blay-out blinds and all this other stuff. You know, try to, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Just kind of, you know what I'm saying? Just sort of keep it simple and engage them in sort of helping them, you know, understand what you're doing, vice.
Yeah. And why, you know, share
that 30,000 mile view of, whoa, there's a lot going on here to take a duck or a goose seems a lot, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, and just, you know, sharing your passion. I think the part that I love is that one of the first things you said was talk about safety. And I think, you know, depending how old a kid is, you definitely need to cover that. But, you know, if they're little, then it's going to go in one ear and come out the other. But that's something you definitely need to talk to with adults. And like you said, you know, make them engaged in it and the whole hunt, you know, why you use this, why you use that. But the one serious time is when you talk about safety and, you know, making sure that muzzle is never pointed at anyone and, you know, your safety and all that. So that was a great point you had to start off your little convo there.
Yeah. And I think the best thing too is, you know, just getting them to go. Right. And, you know, if you get 30 minutes, you get 30 minutes. If you get an hour, you get an hour, you know, but don't push it, because you'll get to a point, just like with any kid, you'll get to a point where you reach the, you know, the point of diminishing returns, where it's, you know, you're trying to force it and you're just doing more harm than you are good, you know?
Right.
So, just depending on the age of the hunter and that kind of thing. So just always sort of keep that in mind, but
right.
Yeah, that's a good question. All right, let's go on to the next one. Let's see here. The next question is from Ryan D. Didn't provide a last name, but Ryan D. from the great state of Maine. Oh, this one's specifically for you, Dan. This is fun. Dan, I have a vehicle that I usually take hunting, but you've inspired me to get a minivan. Whoa. My question isn't about what kind of van, but I would like to know where to get some sweet flame graphics for the side, because that's more my style. Love the show. Keep up the great work. Wow. It looks like you've had an impact on some folks out there.
You know, Ryan has been one of the longtime listeners of the show, so I'm really not surprised that he's going to make the jump into a minivan. And I'm really
well. Hold on, we're assuming it's the Ryan that we know. It could be another Ryan D from Maine. I mean, I don't know for sure.
Yeah. So you know, but I probably, you know, in this situation, I'd probably go straight to Google. You know, look up car graphics, any kind of, you know, support your local business, and you know, I'm sure someone out there can find you some good old flame graphics for whatever kind of van that you're going to get. You know, I would probably say, you know, go with contrasting colors. You know, if you want white flames, then get a dark van, or, you know, if you get a white van, then go with some darker flames, like a dark red, maybe blue into red. But, you know, that's kind of my advice for that one. So, you know, good luck on your ventures and purchasing a minivan, and, you know, maybe send us some pictures and, you know, show us how many decoys you can get in that bad boy.
Yeah. And the good news here is I literally cannot contribute at all to this question, because I don't know anything about minivans and or flames. So I feel like you covered that adequately.
Yeah. Thanks. Good.
All right, moving on.
All right, let's see here. This one is from TJ. He's stumbling around looking for hunting podcasts. He's a fan of Meat Eater and Hunt Talk, and rejuvenated my want to learn to duck hunt. He found our podcast on iTunes. I've listened to a few while I'm working. Just had a question for you guys. How/where did you guys learn to hunt? I live in western Wisconsin and love listening to all the information you guys spit out. However, I was just wondering if you had books you read or anything like that. Thanks a lot. So
that's a good question. That's a real good question.
It is. And,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, my background in hunting would just be, with whitetail and bear hunting with my dad is where we really got started in small game. So when you're talking about, we talk about safety a lot, like every time out was a safety lesson, or, he's telling us about pinch points and draws and everything with deer hunting and, making us kick the brush, going small game hunting, stuff like that. So that's kind of my base of hunting. And then, going and hunting with friends, and then, how and where did you guys learn to hunt? And then, just it ended up.
How'd you get into the waterfowl?
The waterfowl was in high school, and it was always something, because our high school, which I had mentioned on the last podcast, has the Ducks Unlimited weekend. It's the third weekend in September, just a huge waterfowl fest in our small town, parade, everything like that. So we would always have, football video on Saturday mornings after Friday night games, and, go out and get the hot sausage and go and watch tape and all that stuff. So that was just something that we always did. But I didn't always hunt waterfowl. And then I actually started on Stewart's farm, a couple older guys, Crum and those fellas that, we all went out and had a great shoot in the snow. I think there were probably 20 stalks of corn standing, and we had like 6 guys standing in those 20 stalks, and birds were coming in nonstop. It was snowing hard, and that was the first hunt we went on. We wounded a couple and had to chase them a couple hundred yards down through the field. We didn't have dogs or anything, but that was my first experience. And, from there, every time you see something on the Outdoor Channel or watching it, like, I was always captivated by the waterfowl hunting. And then, I really didn't get into it till after college. And that was actually my brother and, his brother-in-law is when we really started getting hot and heavy and buying all the decoys and calls and really getting property and all that stuff. So, just learning from other people's experience and getting out there and doing it. So, in high school, we didn't know a lot, but we went out and had fun and harvested birds. And then once we got a little older, we spent the time and research and finances that we had and have only gotten better.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it has to do with like just a mentor or a group of guys, that you can do it with. And unfortunately, I mean, for me, I didn't really have that to start. Because I was living, here in Virginia, and this place is tough to start anything because it's very difficult to get access to places, and there's not as many hunters around, so finding people that are willing to help you out and stuff can be tricky and things like that. But I was really just looking for a way to extend the season. It was like I was a deer hunter primarily, and I wanted to do something a little different after in January and then in February, and I saw waterfowl season went halfway through February, so I started kind of kicking the tires on it. And my first experience was actually a guided duck hunt up on the eastern shore of Maryland, and I went with a couple guys. And, I borrowed some waders, and, I had my 870 Express and stuff, but I just wade out there, and we were hunting a flooded corn impoundment, and, just the whole thing was pretty cool. But that first wood duck that came in, just kind of watching that and seeing, one of the guys in the blind take it and everything, I was sort of like, wow, it literally, that was all it took. And I was kind of hooked from right there. And, since that time, I've evolved pretty much into I don't want to say exclusively bird waterfowl hunter, but like 90% of my hunting, probably 95% of my hunting is that. And I do a ton of research. I read constantly about waterfowl hunting, whether it's DU, Delta, various forums. There are some books out there, but I find myself more interested in the more just sort of, I don't want to call it organic, but just sort of like that, the more natural discussions that tend to come across like forum pages and things like that. Social media discussions, those types of things. But I read a ton of, about, migrations and feeding patterns and breeding, habitat and things like that, just kind of nerd out on it. And the more you do that, the more you sort of grasp just the whole, foundation of waterfowl in general. And, it's just all consuming. And, it's just something, it's always something that there's always something there to challenge you with waterfowl hunting, which I love. For at first it was just when I looked at a gadwall and a widgeon, being able to tell the difference between the two. And then it's like, go from that to being able to identify a bird in flight and, the different characteristics that it have and all that kind of stuff. And then, just the rate of wing patterns and all, the wing beats and stuff like that. All of that is just super cool to me and just sort of fueled my own passion. So, I would just say, unless you have a good mentor, it's going to be up to you to sort of pursue that and just research everything you can, go to outdoor shows, talk to people, get on forums, ask questions, all of that kind of things, because there are a lot of guys out there that are willing to help you. There's certainly enough guys that are out there that are going to act like, they've got everything figured out and will talk down to you. But, I wouldn't let that discourage you and, people's egos and stuff with that. You got to be, just kind of take that with a grain of salt. But I would say in large, the waterfowl community is a good group of guys that are usually more than willing to discuss techniques and tactics and things like that if you're kind of just getting started.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. I think, talking about how to get it done, they'll tell you every time and every single little trick. But as far as spots, good luck with that half. But, I think one book that I would probably get if I were you would be the Duck ID, because it's cool to know what you're after. And even if, like, I remember last year I'm driving down near the lake and there's just, I think there were probably 30 pintails, and we don't see pintails a lot, but I'm in my truck and I immediately pull over and got so excited because I was like, oh my gosh, look at those pennies, just right off the bat could tell, what I was looking at, took some pictures and ended up getting a lot of road signs in those photos. So I don't think I ever posted them, but it was just cool to be able to drive down the road and tell what kind of ducks were circling the field. So that's a good question.
Yeah. And just to follow up with your point there, being able to identify the bird that you shoot is critically important in my opinion. As a waterfowl hunter, it's your responsibility to know the species of bird you're taking before you squeeze the trigger. A lot of people don't do that. It's just my opinion that you should be able to ID your bird before you shoot it, especially in situations where you get, shooting on teals and wood ducks and things in the early seasons, where you're just trying to take teal. You don't want to have any mistake kills. You don't want to kill over your daily limit for those particular species, that kind of stuff.
Or even, black ducks, a limit of one black duck and, the same exact as a mallard. But if you haven't been under the wings every once in a while to see the difference, it's very difficult. And I would hate to know how many mistake black ducks are killed every year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of wood ducks are killed in the early teal seasons.
Oh, sure.
A lot of them probably go unreported, but, try to do the best you can to identify the bird before you take the shot would just be my recommendation. In that the Duck ID book is awesome. I mean, it's weatherproof. It lives in my blind bag even today. So definitely, recommend getting that if you're new to the game, so to speak. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Next question is from Gary, and Gary's from the UK, coming across the pond with it. Let's see here. Loves the show. He's a waterfowl hunter. Great to hear our perspective and how we do things differently over here. He's actually interested in hearing about U.S. laws on interference and intimidation of hunters. He says that they've got a lot of issues over there. They have a right to roam. So basically you can't really be prosecuted for trespassing. So people will turn up in balaclavas and do not have to remove them. I don't know what that means. so much, but basically it sounds like they're dealing with some harassment out there, and people go out and damage property, intimidating people, and even attacking people in the past. So he'd like to hear us discuss a little bit about U.S. laws and if we've ever had to report anything like that. So thanks for the question, Gary. What about you? What say you, Dan?
There are hunter harassment laws, but at the same time, depending what state you're in, it can be very difficult to have that enforced. And one state I'm talking about would be Pennsylvania. And we were just talking about this because I actually put a couple trail cam photos up because there's 3 guys that were walking around behind my house, and they're walking on trails that my wife walks with our 3 little kids. So it really bothered me. And we're not from a big place, so I figured that someone would know them. It's posted. If I caught them and called the game commissioner, they would say, call the state police. And then half the time you have the state police saying, call the game commission. So our laws here in Pennsylvania aren't like Ohio or, out west where trespassing is, a big deal, which I think it should be. But, he's saying that, these people intimidate, attack, and even caused a fatality. So I know a couple years ago, we used to hunt a pond, and, the first birds would come in and we'd shoot boom, 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 boom. There's 3 guys, 9 shots, and he would come out and stand at the end of his driveway, which we were, plenty far away. And the next time birds came in, he would stand there and bang the top of his metal garbage can off the side of it just to mess with our hunt. So we ended up never calling him in, but we did have a conversation with him that finally allowed us to hunt without that interference. So I don't think it's always best to go straight to the law, but if we would have went and he would have had a different personality than what he had, he said before that someone had shot towards his house and rained BBs on it, and that's why he was so bothered. But he respected us for going and talking to them, and we kind of took care of that. But yeah, I mean, as far as this issue, if people come with headdresses and stand there and you can't remove them, and that's going to be an issue. So I feel bad for Gary here that they have to deal with that, and hopefully he did put a petition that they're starting to kind of get rid of this kind of interference that they're dealing with. So hopefully there's a right to roam, and that's tough on private property. We have a lot of game lands, and if there's people hiking and on public property, then you have to deal with that, whether it be waterfowl or, whitetail or whatever you're hunting. So you have to be mindful of them. It is public property, but if you're on private land and they're trespassing, then there's definitely some laws that can be enforced.
Well, and even then there's harassment laws that are, whether you're on public ground or not, that can be enforced, that, if you're doing something legal, they can't, impede your ability to do that. But that doesn't mean that they won't, try, certainly. And, I don't think I've ever had to call the law enforcement for anyone harassing me, but I have had the law called on me for hunting a pond that is, in Virginia, you have to be 150 yards from the closest dwelling. And I've hunted from a pond where that's about 143 yards from like $700,000 homes. And we just like you talk about 3-4 guys just cutting loose back there, just busting. And, the cops come on down and they basically, check us out, and we're legal. I mean, they know we're legal, but people are still complaining. And it got to the point for me personally, even though I loved hunting that spot because it was close to my house and it was really, really productive. It just got to the point where it wasn't worth it, because the game commission basically told me, they said, you guys aren't doing anything illegal here, but just take a look around and, tell me what you think. Those families up there have kids and stuff like that. Like, what do you think? And they basically said, if you step out of line one at all here, they're going to nail us because, they just say, just be warned. Right. So for me, it's not worth messing around with. And I can relate to these people, having some issues there. I empathize with them, but at the same time, like, it's a tough thing and it sucks because I hate to lose that spot, but, it's not worth dealing with the cops every time I'm down there. So, that's not really me calling the cops on anybody, obviously, but, you have to be mindful of a lot of things. And, if you're having people giving you a hard time, you got to know what legal recourses you have at your disposal, if it gets to that point. But, a lot of times if you can talk to them and kind of resolve the situation that way, that's best. But, like Gary's situation sounds like it's much more intense than that. So I don't know if even something like that would be worth trying to discuss. You probably just best to get law enforcement involved, I would think.
Yeah. It sounds pretty intense. Property damage, intimidation, attack, and even caused a fatality. So,
yeah. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Well, wasn't it last season that like the woman was trying to harass duck hunters and got shot in the face?
that was a few years ago, but it definitely.
Oh, was it? I thought that was last year.
It made it a lot of rounds last year on social media.
Okay. Well, that's what you get. You harass people, you get shot in the face. All right. Let's see here. I think we got another question. This question comes from Shane. Sugar Shane says, well, I should rephrase this. It's not a question, but I just want to let Dan know I have a few extra cheap tires for his van if his get too bald from doing burnouts. Well, that's good to know, Shane. Appreciate the heads up there. And this is what we're dealing with here, Dan. Guys just hammering home on the minivan, man.
I tell you what, we do have, coming up into the garage is gravel, and then we have a concrete pad, and my wife does do some burnouts. So, Shane, I might have to, get back in touch with you here after winter and maybe get some new tires on the van before we start spring and, have to worry about.
You should check with them. Maybe they're snow tires. You could get studded up or put.
I have good snow tires on or something. Yeah, I don't need the family hydroplaning come springtime. So I appreciate that, Shane. All right, let's go here. This comes from Dylan. Goose hunting small waters. Hey guys, I hunt up in Minnesota where I usually hunt a few small ponds for ducks and the fields for geese, but I can't hunt any fields until the corn is cut. I have access to a few small private ponds and a river that always has a few geese in them, but usually no more than 10 or so. Just wondering if you guys have any experience with small ponds and any advice, or if I should just head to public land. Thanks.
Well, I love hunting small ponds. I do it all the time. My favorite types of ponds are, sort of the midday loafing ponds where birds will come typically after they feed in the morning and they'll hang out there all day. Those are awesome to hunt. And that tends to be where a lot of the birds congregate in our area, at least. But, the big thing with hunting small ponds is you got to be careful in your setup and sort of how you deploy your decoys, because you just don't want to crowd the pond too much depending on how small it is. And, if you're dealing with wind and stuff like that, it might be hard for the birds to get down out of that wind, that kind of thing. But I mean, I don't know what limits are in this area that he's hunting, but, if you're hunting a 3-bird limit and you got 10 birds on that pond, if that's a flock or two, you got your limit or whatever. But, I definitely think it's worth giving it a shot, over public land, at least, the public land that I'm used to hunting, but maybe there's some more isolated public ground. I don't know.
Yeah. One thing I always struggle with is, in situations like this, is how many decoys do you put out? If these are local birds, which it didn't mention that. But let me see here. So the corn isn't cut yet while he's hunting it. So it's, early season. These birds probably go there every day. If they know that there's never, ever, ever another bird there when they get there, how much does that affect them? How much do you think it affects them? If you're seeing 10 birds and then you go and hunt that and you put, a dozen floaters out, you think that's going to scare them off? That's one thing that always crosses my mind. So I always go with the smaller spread and, like you said, you don't want to crowd them out by any means, but you definitely want to, if you're doing any calling at all, you want, you do want some visual contact there.
Well, what I like to do too, in pond situations, especially if they're small, is I like to maybe I'll set up like 2 or 3 floaters, and it'll be, and I'll set them up oriented like they're swimming up to the bank. And then I'll put my full bodies or silhouettes up on the bank, maybe feeding on grass or whatever's around the pond if the grass is short enough and conducive for that. So it sort of gives the impression that, birds are landing into the pond and then swimming up onto the bank. So that kind of keeps the water free for them to utilize it to get down, but still has the confidence of other birds kind of milling around up on the bank. And it can help hide your position a little bit too.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point. I like it.
But typically, you're right. Those spots don't require a lot of calling. You're not going to want to just
they know it and they want to be there.
Hammer them over that little small pocket of water, probably.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Dylan.
Yes. All right. Let's see here. One last one. It looks like that we got here. This question comes from Travis W. Dan, why are your waders so leaky? Did you run them over with the van? Oh my goodness. Wow. Dan?
No, I didn't run them over with the van. Once again, it's a crotch leak. So I don't know. I think maybe I just need to go with some breathable waders so they're not as tight on me. And
so what's your wader situation currently?
I have a pair of leaky waders, dude.
So you're in the market.
Yeah. I just don't want to spend money. I got diver decoys to buy.
Well, I mean, what are you going to hunt them in? Your underwear? I mean, you need some waders, man.
No, I know. But I want to get breathable, I think, without a doubt. So I'm going to start checking it out, start seeing what I can come up with.
Yeah. I got the Cabela's waders, the breathable ones, and I've been very, very happy with them. But there are a lot of good breathable wader options out there. And they come in every price range. So whatever you want to spend on them, you definitely can.
Yeah.
But
some frog togs.
Yeah, I personally think that breathable waders are, I don't know if they're going to completely phase out neoprene, but they're going to, in my opinion, they're going to overtake the market to a larger extent. I mean, you're kind of seeing it now, from budget line at Rogers Sporting Goods to Banded to Frog Togs to, Cabela's, LL Bean. You can get a hunting breathable wader through Orvis. A lot of guys wear Sims. I mean, there's a lot of great options out there. And I'm telling you, I don't care where you hunt. I don't care how cold it is. You can hunt cold weather in breathable waders. It absolutely can be done. And quite frankly, I would bet that you'll be more comfortable and more warm than you would be with your neoprenes that are going to ultimately leak on you anyway. Dan learns.
Yeah, just prove it every year.
Yep, indeed. So that does it for our questions this week. But if you've got questions that you want us to cover, or you got, like to chat with us, definitely hit us up and let us know. And, if you guys like these listeners' questions episodes, we'll keep doing them. If not, we won't. So let us know what you think about that. And, we're back into we're cruising in season 3 now. Weekly releases coming out, so a lot more content for everyone to check out. And the teal seasons are cranking up across the country, and kind of this, the first day of fall is here, and weather's starting to cool down. So it's definitely starting to feel like we're getting to that time of year. I talked about it last episode. Sometimes the September hunts are, the only thing good about them sometimes is the fact that you just haven't hunted in so long.
Yep.
The rest of it stinks. I mean, it's hot. Your birds are hot when you get them. Everything stinks. It's bugs. I mean, it's just, not ideal, but, it seems like once it starts turning colder, it doesn't take long, and it's real cold and real good for us duck hunters. So
right.
All good things.
Before we go, I just want to thank all the new listeners, because we've seen a spike in our download numbers. So, it is beginning of the season and people getting excited. So there's a lot of people looking for podcasts. I think the podcast as a whole is just picking up, and people are listening to what they want to listen to. So, stick with us, and hopefully we bring you content that you enjoy. And thanks for tuning in.
Indeed. It's always nice to see those little bump in the numbers, especially, a lot of people getting jazzed up for the season. So they take a look through the library and look back on some of our older episodes, which I'm sure are just incredibly embarrassing if I went back and listened to them. But I've purposely never listened to like the old ones again, just because there's probably so much just debauchery going on. I can't even handle it.
We should probably just go and start cutting like 5-minute sections and have that for like our 100th episode whenever we come across that. But I think that'd be pretty funny, maybe.
Oh,
I think we'd probably started off when we were talking with Jeff Coates, and he told me he was talking about that shark. The shark coming was between his dog and the boat. And what sound did I make?
You're just like, yeah, that when you before you even said that was the first thing that came to my mind.
Oh my gosh,
was that? That's too good. Anyway, all right, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Again, if you got questions, send them in, and we will keep tackling them as we get an opportunity. And we appreciate everyone interacting with the show and sending them in. All right, that does it for episode 56 of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We'd like to thank you guys for sending in your questions. Hopefully you enjoyed our discussion and got a little bit out of that. If you want to send us questions, shoot them over to info@hpoutdoors.com or across any of the social media sites. Check out all the past episodes of the show at hpoutdoors.com or on iTunes. Hopefully the season's cranking up for you. Weather's turning colder, and the hunting will be turning on. So for this week, for Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.